I'm Scott Cooke, and I'm here to welcome you to CS Talks at One Essex Crossing. This is the 6th year of the CS Talks programming, and there have been some truly remarkable guests with some tremendous reach, which makes me a little bit nervous to think about how many people are actually going to watch this conversation. But I'm good with that because I am a true fan of this project. I live in the neighborhood and have done so since 2003. I've witnessed firsthand the growth, and I actually visit Essex Crossing almost 5 times a week. I'm not kidding. I do grocery shopping there. My favorite Japanese restaurant is there, and I love the bike shop as well. So Essex Crossing is a crucial and very exciting addition to my neighborhood. And with that, I'm pleased to introduce our panelists today. Charlie Bendit and Paul Pariser, they're co-founders and chief executives of Taconic Partners, and Colleen Wenke, the chief development officer. Taconic is a developer behind some of the city's most exciting placemaking initiatives, including the development of the former Port Authority building on 8th Avenue, which we all know as the Google building. It's the foundation of the Meatpacking district. And then most recently, their work at Essex Crossing, which we are discussing today. So I'd like to introduce first Charlie to tell us a little bit about Taconic and your history.
Well, thanks, Scott. Well, Taconic came from a relationship that Paul and I have had since 1976, when I was a broker selling apartment buildings in New Jersey, and Paul was at graduate school at Columbia University. And so we've been friends since 1976, but our professional partnership began in 1981 at a firm called Jones Lang Wooten. And Paul was there since 1978 and recruited me at the end of 1980. And I joined the firm in the beginning of 1981. And we were in the same group, and together we helped build that organization. And then in the beginning of the 90s, 1993, we decided, Paul was still at Jones Lang, and I decided that I wanted to pursue my own career and start my own business, which I did in 93. Paul followed in 94, and then we came together to form Taconic in 1997. So our professional careers has spanned 4 decades. It's been a great partnership. We've built a great business. We have 75, 80 people in our organization. We started out buying office buildings and renovating and upgrading office buildings and value add type opportunities. We branched into residential in 2000, and then in the mid 2000s, we got into ground up development with our first project called the Caledonia. And since then, we have expanded our business to include over 15 million square feet of office buildings, over 3,000 apartments. We own apartments in workforce housing in the Bronx, and we own luxury rental buildings that we've developed here in Manhattan. I would say that the thing that Essex Crossing represents is like a capstone project in our careers. It's what we have built our careers to do. When we were young people at the age of 26 and 27, we really admired those developers that did projects like Essex Crossing. And we're very proud to be one of the co-developers in a project that's so impactful in the New York City marketplace.
So tell me, when you joined forces, the project that seems also really a transformative or pivotal part of your partnership was the Meatpacking district and placemaking as a concept and what you've done in that whole area. Paul, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of came, what year it was it also?
Well, that was 1997 when really very quickly we came together. That was one of the first deals we did was the acquisition of the Sylvan Lawrence portfolio, which were 3 buildings in Lower Manhattan. and this big hunk lug of a warehouse, a sort of full city block between 15th and 16th, 8th to 9th. Some people looked at it as a white elephant. Historically, it was back office. And Charlie and I looked at this thing and said, this is one of the finest potential office buildings in the world with size and with scale. So we put a lot of capital, a lot of our time into figuring that out. It became an internet center. We attracted very exciting first-class commercial tenants like Donny Deutsch Advertising, and it began to take hold. As we were taking hold, we began to look out over the Meatpacking district and the disarray that was happening and the changes that were happening there. And we were able to pick up a couple of very, very nice assets. Charlie mentioned the Caledonia, which is a site we developed in venture with Related, very excited by that. We also bought the corner of 14th and 9th where Apple store is. We also did a deal on 13th and Washington where Samsung's headquarters are. And when we came into the community in the Meatpacking district, we saw the need for coordination amongst landlords. We saw the responsibility of what it means to be a developer. You have a responsibility to the shop owners. We have a responsibility to the neighboring villages. It became clear that there needed to be a centralized voice. And one of the things Taconic is very proud of is that we really brought the Meatpacking district together, ultimately formed the BID, which is now the Meatpacking District BID, MPIA, which manages all the plazas and the parks. We managed that business for quite a long time. For a decade, we were chairing that commission. We're now just on the board, let some other folks do it. But it's the same kind of vision for community that we brought to our project at the Lower East Side, to sort of look as a coordinated developer with a lot of responsibilities to make this a great place for all constituents in the community.
So that success really sort of led you into having the secret sauce, if you will, for Essex Crossing. I'd like to bring Colleen into the conversation a little bit and talk about how that bid and that whole process came about, the RFP that you guys received, and how it all sort of started to work together. And from a neighbor in the community, I saw the transformation. So I was not quite old enough to really see the Meatpacking. I'm kidding. The Meatpacking district. I mean, I do realize how well it worked there, and it seems like what you're doing here is really similar. Colleen, do you want to talk a little about that?
Sure. So to give you a little bit of insight on what happened in order to come to the culmination of what Essex Crossing is today, the sites date back and have a long history on the Lower East Side. The city had come in and basically through an eminent domain program had raised the buildings, and they remained parking lots for many, many years. And through political pressures and for many different reasons, the city couldn't come together, and private organizations couldn't come together and figure out what could be approved to be done there. As a last big push of the Bloomberg administration, in concert with the Economic Development Corporation, they worked with the community and many of the strong stakeholders there to figure out what was important to happen on these sites, which had basically been utilized as parking lots for many, many years. And what did the community want to see there, and what was important to them so that they could move to a successful ULURP process, which is a rezoning process that happens, and then ultimately go out to the development community and solicit feedback and proposals from the private sector. So we were happily participants in that process. We partnered with L&M Development Partners and BFC Partners, and our equity partner, Goldman Sachs, to pull together a response to this city-originated RFP to address many of the concerns that they had, and what I call the list of ingredients that the community wanted to see to happen within what we now call Essex Crossing.
So I know that the Lower East Side is truly an authentic New York City neighborhood. I mean, I think it's from homes of many immigrants and families who've come through the neighborhood and people who hold it really dear. Maybe Charlie, you can tell us a little bit about just the physical boundaries and things that were key to the proposal and putting this together when you were looking at developing the area? I know there's a lot of things that the community asked for, small scale retail and job creation and all of those sorts of things that come together. So you are truly a part of the community.
Yeah, I mean, sure. We should go back to a little bit of the history here as well. You know, this area was largely tenement buildings, like where the tenement museum is. All of those buildings populated this area, and they created health hazards, fire hazards. And it was in the 1950s that Robert Moses prevailed upon the federal government to give him a grant to redevelop these areas. And what Colleen was referring to was the fact that a number of these sites were developed in the 1950s, but these prominent sites, the ones along Delancey Street, stood vacant because the various interest groups in the community couldn't decide what to do. It took 4 years of focus groups to get the community to come together to decide on what should be built. And this is an amalgamation of what the various interest groups wanted. One interest group wanted all affordable housing. Another interest group wanted more market rate housing. They wanted commercial space. And what came out of this was an amalgamation of what both of those groups aspired to see on these sites. And they sat since 1955 as vacant parking lots. But what appealed to us about this is the ability to put together 1, 2, 3, 4 contiguous, actually 5 contiguous sites, but 9 in total. That is a huge amount of space. There is nothing like it in New York City south of 96th Street, except for Hudson Yards. But one of the other things that appealed to us is that this was like the hole in the center of a donut. And the donut, the meat of the donut is the essence of what the diversity of New York City. You have Chinatown just to the southwest, Little Italy to the west. I know, Scott, that you think Soho is a bit of a stretch to get to, but it's really only like about a 10-minute walk. The Lower East Side, you could walk across the Williamsburg Bridge and be in Williamsburg in 10 or 15 minutes.
You're describing my Saturday. And it's funny, before Essex Crossing came up, I would go to Soho to have coffee, but now I actually have coffee in my neighborhood because there's now a place to do that. Here, interestingly, you're saying that all these groups had lots of interests. You've brought together so many different businesses inside the property, from the Essex Market, which was across the street, which I actually described before as, I thought it was very institutional looking, the design, but you actually took, the design was nothing too special in my personal opinion from what the city brought, but what you've brought to Essex Crossing, you actually brought in all the businesses that were there, including others. Can you talk a little bit about that? I just think the market, the Essex Market, is a fascinating case study just in terms of supporting the neighborhood, the local businesses, the Puerto Rican grocery store, all of the things that really are there. And I know there's more to it than that. So if you want to talk about that a little bit, just the community engagement and bringing all of those elements in.
Colleen, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, well, this was a partnership between the EDC and us as developer. Part of our commitment was to build a fabulous new 30,000-foot facility for the market. As you know, they were across the street in a much smaller, more cramped, difficult, low ceiling kind of environment. And our job was, as part of our project, was to bring them across and highlight them and give them prominence. And I will say that we went out there today for lunch, Charlie and I, and the place was jammed. It was really operating beautifully. The stores were open. Everyone's masked up, of course, but the stores are doing terribly well. I think I hear great things about their results. Their sales have gone up dramatically, and it's really now a more successful development. We also made it part of our market line. You come through there and into the market line, so it's integrated. I don't think if you didn't know where the lines of the traditional marketplace and the new market line where you would know, We've designed it in such a way that it's a much of a flowing open air market. And as you say, it truly serves the community. The quality of the meat guy and the wine stores and what's being sold there is really fantastic, and it's well loved by the entire Lower East Side.
And a lot of the businesses I know for a fact are businesses from the neighborhood, Veselka, or look, all of these places are traditionally a part of the community anyway. You brought them in, which is great. Maybe Colleen, you can speak to a little bit about the other businesses. From one side is the ICP, and you can completely walk underground from Clinton Street. I think I was told, I've yet to do it, all the way to the subway without exiting. And this is all inside the building. So it's really kind of fascinating.
So one of the concepts that I think allowed us to be the winning bid for Essex Crossing was the concept of taking our marketplace downstairs. So Paul called it's the market line. That was what we decided to name it. And basically the light bulb went off, and it was the idea, if you could bring people downstairs and connect them through a common, passageways that went under two streets, you created this, underground kind of community. And the architecture, and we can speak about that a little bit, allowed natural light to come in, but it basically unlocked a lot of value within the project. One of the missions that we've had as a group of developers was to make sure that this was sort of a patchwork quilt of different vendors who were down here. Many of them have strong ties to the Lower East Side. Many of them, this is their second location. They're not necessarily national brands, and that was important to us to bring it down. And it was this kind of bespoke, curated experience that basically you could get off on the subway at Delancey and Essex, go underground, pick up your coffee, your flowers, your wine, your seafood, and basically navigate from Essex Street all the way through Clinton. I will say, as an anecdotal story, right, it sounds genius. Okay, just create some passageways under New York City streets. It was no easy feat. It was beautifully designed on a section on an architectural plan in our RFP response. But stories like that take many, many years in terms of process and agreements with city agencies and understanding what really happens. And if you think about it, navigating that path really only happens within hospitals and universities. It's quite rare to have it within a private development. We were successful at being able to probe and investigate and seek the approvals of, I think, every city agency and every agency you can imagine, except the FAA, sort of thing. We had to go to everybody. And, proud to say that today you can walk and navigate that path.
And it's not just,
by the way, it's kind of unprecedented. The original idea was to close Norfolk Street and Suffolk Street because we had this 4 different blocks. Why not just create outdoor cafes? We had the master plan architects kind of laughed at us when we came up with that idea. And then one of the architects said, well, we can't go over the street, but maybe we can go under the street. And that, I don't think there's another project in the city that's done that sort of thing, which makes this even more unique. And one of the things that's really beneficial to all of the people that call Essex Crossing home or a place to work is what this amenity really means to them. Imagine if you lived upstairs or if you worked upstairs, that you could go down and have a market like this right at your fingertips. You could eat, you could shop. And what Colleen was saying is you leave, you can go pick up coffee and a donut and get on the subway and go to your office. Or if your office was upstairs, you get to your office and you can have lunch there, you can have dinner there. It's a great amenity that very few projects have to offer something like this.
and you can also go downstairs and get a haircut because there's a barber shop that's been in the neighborhood for 50 years. I don't know how long the barber shop's been there, but he's still in the space. Speaking of,
I used to have a lot of hair. And then I went to that barber.
You know, when we started the dialogue and Charlie was talking about the original days in the 70s, I remember Charlie had an afro out to here.
And then I went to that barber.
Although you kept him in business and then you gave him a new home, which is great. Speaking of new homes, I think we should really just touch on a little bit the living at 1 Essex Crossing, which is launching sales in the winter of 2021. I can't believe it's already 2020. The numbers are crazy to me sometimes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I know there's 83 residences and just the design, I'm actually a little bit curious about the architects. Are there many architects? Was there one? Did you work with a group on the project? That's just something that sparked my...
So one of the obligations that we had was that we could have no two adjacent sites have the same design team, the same architectural team. And that was an obligation that we had so that it didn't really, every building had its own unique identity and it didn't look, you know, much like a master planned community, but that it continued to make those ties to the community and it didn't look, you know, kind of sanitized. 1 Essex Crossing is designed by Setra Ruddy architects who we've come to, you know, foster a really great relationship with, both from a design and execution side. The genesis, you know, the massings were pre-described in that ULURP process, but the actual designs of the building are facilitated through a process in concert with us as developer. And, you know, really we thought of 1 Essex Crossing as kind of the pendant on the necklace that, yes, you know, these 9 buildings were in terms of scale and presence. It kind of sat in the middle. And what it allowed for, because it does occupy 1 full city block, was amazing access to outdoor space. And because the residential units don't start until the 6th floor, views and kind of connections to other elements within the city. So 1 Essex Crossing has 83 residences, you know, ranging in size from studios to 3 bedrooms. More than 30% of the units that are offered have private outdoor space. And as I mentioned, I think we're looking out at our amenity floor, which, you know, takes advantage of that full city block presence to have glass enclosed amenity spaces and also common outdoor spaces for all the residents, to benefit from and enjoy.
So beneath that is where the market and where the actual commercial space is, correct? So right beneath that 6th floor, that's when you were talking about, Charlie, the high ceilings, the sweeping space. Is that what's right? I'm just curious for.
Yeah, we have two of the buildings have office space, 4 floors of office space. Each of those 2 buildings, the 1 Essex Crossing and the building to its east, each have 175,000 square feet of office space, under which is ground floor retail, under which is the market line.
Great.
So you have.
I wanted to gather a scale of how it all sort of folds.
Yeah. And then all accessible by different modes of transportation between bicycle, walking, subway, 4 subway lines right there on the corner of Essex Street and Delancey Street.
So the project really is you know, an extension of the neighborhood, and I feel like it's kind of, or it is becoming the heart of the neighborhood with everything that you have in one area. In one, how many blocks is the project from Clinton
5.
to 5? So I think another thing, just to really go back to the idea that you are a part of the community and that Taconic has built this great thing for this great project for the community. I think they're built the actual businesses that are inside of Essex Crossing are part, but I think you're also doing some things as a part of the RFP process that's job training and other partnerships that really help the community. Am I correct in that, Paul?
Yes, we have made commitments for job training, both in the construction side and in the workforce, which we monitor and track. We're doing quite well with that. You mentioned also we put together when we had a cultural component, which is ICP. We had to build a fairly significant museum, which was part of our commitment, and it's a fantastic
It's amazing.
Center of Photography, which we consolidated them in from a couple of other locations and moved them in. So there are also non-for-profit office tenants who we have committed and brought in as significant office tenants and retail presence for which were commitments we made for the various nonprofits that are in the Lower East Side. So quite a lot of
And
different.
the Girls Club too, correct? Did I hear that from?
There's the Grand Street settlement, which is actually, as Paul mentioned, has office space, but they're also a partner in the development. The other thing that we committed to is, while 50% of the units are affordable, we have a building that's dedicated to senior citizens as well. So, it is a very diverse community. And it's one of the things that we're proud to celebrate is the diversity of the community within the community. And then we've also embraced the local community as well. We've partnered with the local school district to expose children to career opportunities. We've had 3rd to 5th graders come in and meet with architects and contractors and understand what those professions are and the opportunities that are available to them as they think about what they aspire to. So that's part of our DNA and our partners' DNA, is when we're making such a significant investment, as Paul had said earlier, when we're making a significant investment in a community, it's more than just building a building. It is putting your tentacles out and embracing the community at large. And that's what we did in the Meatpacking district. And that's what we're doing here. And that's what we've done in other neighborhoods as well.
I'm going to just say that I know, as living in the community, I feel that you truly are a part of it. And it's funny, I always use the Lower East Side car service. It's called Delancey Car Service. And I opt for them over Uber often. And a few weeks ago, I was in the car and the driver was telling me about the project as we drove by on the Williamsburg Bridge. I acted as if I knew nothing about it, but I was like, what do you think? He's like, oh yeah, it's great. He was saying how he wanted to live there and had lived in the neighborhood since the 60s. So to get compliments from people who are down there is great. And I think we all have a little bit of we were given a thank you gift from CS for participating in this today. And I want to, hopefully everyone will show theirs off. I know Colleen, yours is behind you on the, what is that thing?
I have a beautiful flower from Saffron BK, which is in the Essex Street Market, their second location. And I was observing, I think it's absolutely stunning. I've never seen anything like it. And I researched them, and they're known for their unusual arrangements. And I will say this holds that high, yeah.
I'm lucky. I've got a Cafe Grumpy beans. My smells amazing. And fortunately, I was able to grab it away from my wife this morning because she would have opened it up and put it into the coffee. But that'll happen tomorrow. But
I wonder why they say it's Grumpy. Is that they're trying to tell you something, or we?
Well, I think it's a fantastic name.
You should only know. And I have organic wine from People's, the wine store. And by the way, the wine store is connected to a wine bar. So you can go into the market line and you can order some wine, buy some wine, sit down and enjoy your wine. Or you can actually go to the Grand Delancey and have one of 52 craft beers that are on tap. We just have to wait until this pandemic is over so that we can assemble people in the market line once again. But it is
your wine out of there no matter what pandemic.
You can still get your wine out of there now.
And I was given some olive oil, which I thought it was a bottle of wine when it showed up, but I'm glad it's olive oil because I actually could use this. This is from Essex Olive and Spice. So
well, don't drink it as if it's wine.
No, I won't. I will probably grab my dinner tonight from from Essex Market. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for
Thank you very much.
participating in CS Talks.
Thanks
All
so much.
right,
Thanks for having us.
come on down.